Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hi, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global friends and Phaidon family. I'm Keith Fox. I'm the CEO of Phaidon Global, and I'm delighted to welcome everyone to our second Phaidon preview, our early access series featuring authors in conversation with their editors. At Phaidon, our sister companies, Monticelli and Art Space, we have the privilege of working with the world's most influential artists, chefs, writers, and thinkers to create beautiful and essential books. Today, you're going to meet the man the Financial Times just named the most loved man in fashion. Sir Paul Smith is joining us to celebrate both the launch of his new book and his company's 50th anniversary. Paul Smith is edited by Tony Chambers with an introduction by Jonathan Ive and will be released in English and French on October 1st, followed by a Japanese edition. Sir Paul will be in conversation with Phaidon's publisher, Amelia Tirani, for an exclusive preview that showcases his one-of-a-kind aesthetic through 50 objects that have inspired him throughout his career. So for those of you joining us for the first time, here's how it's going to work. Amelia and Paul will speak for about 20 minutes. Then Sir Paul will open up to questions from you. To submit a question, use the chat function on your screen. So thank you all for joining Phaidon Preview. You're here today because you're our most valued customers, retailers, partners, authors, and friends. Stay tuned for upcoming sessions, which will feature the brilliant chef Magnus Nilsson, the New York super florist Putnam and Putnam, and the iconic Diane von Furstenberg. So over to Amelia Tirani. Enjoy.
Thank you, Keith. Hi, Paul. How are you doing? Very nice to see you.
Yes.
I can see you in your wonderful office. Let's start talking about the book. So when we started, it was almost 2 years ago. You had a clear vision for what you don't want the book to be. You didn't want a coffee table. Why?
I didn't want it to be too heavy or too big, because often I think people look at them once and then don't really look at them again. And I also didn't really want a book that was just about, oh, this is the clothes from this year and this is the clothes from that year. I just wanted to be more lateral, more interesting, more, why the heck has he put that in the book? I mean, I wanted it to be fun and a bit provoking, you know, make you think about things. And I think it's worked out really interesting, I think.
Yeah, in fact, the book as a organization that is not a classic organization for a fashion monograph. In fact, it's organized around 50 objects, from a book on Bauhaus, a bunch of tulip, or a Dieter Rams radio. The idea of choosing this 50 object was actually born out of the great conversation that we had in that specific office while we were brainstorming the book. And we discussed how important it is for you to be curious, to be open-minded, and to think in a lateral way. Can you talk about your way of looking at it?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the point is that there is so much wonderful product and many things out there now. And I think often, unfortunately, a lot of people are following each other with ideas. And I think if you can just train yourself to look and see and be a curious person and always have that childlike approach to life. First of all, it's more fun to be more childlike, but also you can come up with ideas that are not down the obvious route. I mean, the obvious route is looking at what other people are doing, which of course you need to do, but also you need to do that so you know what not to do. And so I like the idea of just looking at a wall, the texture of a wall, graffiti. It could be anything. I mean, it just could be anything. And I think we just need more curiosity. We're so over-informed right now. We've got so much we're bombarded with opinions and information. I'd quite like to just let my head have a holiday for a while. And yeah.
And in fact, each of these objects is accompanied by a wonderful, very personal text that explain why this particular object inspire you, what it means to you, and how it has somehow shaped your creative process. Should we talk about some of these objects? We can have on the screen some of them, and we can start talk about it. Let's start from the Kodak camera. Oh, you do have one.
This is the original camera that my father bought me when I was aged 11. It's called a Kodak Retinette. My dad was an amateur photographer. And of course, then it was film, not digital. And one of the things that was so helpful with me was that you have this, what is called a eye-level viewfinder here. And when you look through that, obviously the vision is very restricted. And of course, when you have film, it's also very precious. Now we go click, 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 take 20 pictures with our iPhone, delete 19 or delete all of them. But then with pocket money, age 11, taking the pictures were really, had to consider it. So looking through that little viewfinder helped me look and see. And I've never really forgotten that. So when I look at things now, I really try and take in what I see, the texture, the color, the light, the shadow. It could be anything. And that definitely has helped with some originality, doing things differently, but also thinking, why should anybody buy that from me? What's the point? And I think that little narrow vision helped me with that. And of course, my dad was a amateur photographer, so I used to go up into the attic of our house, and which is where he built a dark room, and watch these magical images just coming up with the developer and the chemicals, and then in the enlarger, and so it was like magic, really.
Yeah, it's like this idea of framing and look at things in a different way.
Absolutely.
So your next object is actually a magazine. So we are talking about Domus magazine, who is one of the objects that is in the
Domus magazine, I'm sure everybody who's looking knows it. It's an architectural and product design magazine from Italy, which was edited by Joe Ponti for 50 years, I think. I mean, I don't know how I got to know about the magazine, because it was in the 60s when I first was introduced to it. 1967, I think. I think I've got every one, actually, since 1967. We found a little shop in London that had this magazine. And Pauline, my girlfriend then, my wife now, she managed to get a subscription to it. So somehow or other, it came from Italy to a little distributor and then arrived in Nottingham. The key thing of why I've chosen that was because I don't know how old I was then, in my 20s, and really I kept thinking, why am I interested in this magazine? Because it's got things like a bus shelter or a street light or some public seating or kettle or something. And I thought, why is it on earth it's got these things in? And then, of course, slowly I realized, which is a bit late for me to realize, that all these very practical, ordinary, everyday things have to be designed. And the example on the screen is just a street map, but very interestingly held street map. The curvature on a street light, which means that the light is more in the middle of the road, which is a very elegant way. So I think Domus is, I still get excited about receiving it, because again, so many of the people that design these things have got these amazing minds that take their inspiration from the neck of a swan or the bow of a boat or clouds in the sky, and they probably drew it on the back of an envelope, and it became something very special. I love it. I think it's so good.
And design is really something that you are very much interested in. You even
Yes.
start selling a vacuum cleaner in your shop very early
Yes,
on.
I mean,
How
I mean, my little shop my original shop in my hometown was so tiny, about this big, about 3 meters square. So I started to sell objects and books and objects and prints of posters, pen knives, anything that was interesting, just to help people relax when they walked into the shop, because it was very confrontational. So people were right in front of you. But then that went on to London when I opened my own, my first shop in London in 1979. Dan Sujic, the architect and writer, said to me, in an interview, he said there was no other shop like it in London at the time, because it was a minimal, empty shop. But then on top of that, we sold all these wonderful products, not just clothes. So that's indicated in the book quite a lot.
Let's go to the next subject. Here it is.
This is called a toile. And Pauline, my lovely wife, was studied at the Royal College of Art as a fashion designer, but during the time when they were still teaching couture fashion. So couture fashion is where you make things to fit the body, but also mostly they're made by hand. And couture is very much about how the things are constructed, how they're actually made. And this toile was made quite recently by Pauline, by taking a piece of paper and drafting a pattern, obviously a scale down pattern, from a blank sheet of paper, and making half a toile, which is exactly the way we work. So if we have an idea about something, we'll draft a pattern, then we'll make it in, this fabric's called calico, we make it in calico, we pin it onto this, it's called the stand, we pin it on the stand, and then very quickly you can cut it, widen the lapel, shorten the length, and adjust it. And so her teaching at that this is when I was 21 years of age. So her teaching of high quality, how you construct things, what goes inside, the shoulder pad, the stitching inside, was one of the reasons why I'm talking to you today, because Paul Smith Products has always had a good proportions, scale, cut, shape, understanding when you need to cut things on the bias, and also the quality. When I started, there were so many people doing things that were more creative than me, but our things were delivered on time, beautifully made, and did something called sell. They were, which is what the shopkeepers really love. The interesting thing about this is that when you start designing things like these, or a watch, is that the whole process is really different. And so that's been an interesting thing for me, doing some products like a bicycle, a camera, a watch, spectacles, because with the toile, you just go click, click, cut, cut, cut. In 30 minutes, you've got a shape. But obviously, the whole process of product is a lot longer and more costly as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very interesting because the thing that about your way of doing things and looking at things. And so, what is this image?
Is this the spaghetti now? We've got
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I couldn't hear very well at the moment. The spaghetti was I've been to Japan many times, maybe 100 times, because of my business in Japan is really successful there. And there's an area in Japan that makes all this amazing plastic food. You know, they put it in the front the window of the restaurants to show, so that when you go in as a gaijin, as a foreigner, you can just point to what you want rather than attempt to be able to speak Japanese and say it. And I was fascinated by them because I went to the area, and they're like pieces of art. In fact, in some ways, they're more creative than pieces of art. They look so real. But this particular one looked like a Salvador Dali to me, because it had the sort of the fork sticking out and the spaghetti like this. And so I bought it. It was quite costly, but I bought it and used it in the windows, window dressing, and inside, and then photographically used it onto a shirt, because I was one of the pioneers, without realizing it. I didn't realize I was a pioneer, but a pioneer of using photographs printed onto fabric. And that was in the 80s. And so that method of transferring a photograph onto fabric was something I developed. And the picture in the middle and on the right, the girl in the top and with the trousers, they're from my capsule collection, which is the one I've just done for the 50th anniversary, which is where I've taken things from the archive and remade them. But that is very much about the lateral thinking, you know, like having a plate of spaghetti and using it in a window with nothing else in the window. So one of the other reasons why I think I've had this long career is that you walk by a Paul Smith shop and the window is not necessarily got clothes in it, or it's got something really odd in it or unusual in it. I think Jonathan Ive says in the preface that I used one of his early iMac computers in the window, and that was so pleasing for him. There was no clothes in the window; it was just a computer. So in this world that is so jammed with stuff, try to do things differently and a bit odd, and being your own man is quite brave, because unfortunately a lot of people like to see the same, but doing things a little bit different has worked for me so far. So good. That's the fingers crossed.
So what I found fascinating is the relationship between the object and the image from your archive that we have chosen to account. Sometimes it's immediate, sometimes it appears non-existent, but if you look and think more carefully, it will appear in front of your eyes. How does it work? You go from a packet of seeds to a shirt, or from a Matchbox collection to a pair of socks?
Yeah, I mean, the answer to your question is I don't know, but somehow I seem to have this way that I can just look at something and it becomes an object or a piece of fashion. So the seed packets, it was a shop right near to where I am here, sadly not here anymore, but it was a garden shop that was selling seeds for flowers. And I just saw this packet of seeds and I just thought, oh, a shirt. I don't know how, but it just appeared to me that would make a very colorful pattern shirt. And then, for instance, the Matchboxes, I have a huge collection of postage stamps, travel stickers, Matchboxes, and often it's just the graphic designs, especially on Matchboxes. They're so small, and I always think it's genius that the graphic designer can, not always but often, give the character of the bar or the cafe that they've done the work for the matches for their restaurant or cafe, and they can sort of say something so instantly with just a couple of lines. I think that's really clever.
That's great. So the book has a foreword by Johnny Ive, the designer behind Apple, as an introduction by Tony Chamber, and also has a series of lovely small interventions that are tipped in the book by people such as Martin Parr, Jamie Oliver, John Posen, Jim Fallon, and James Dyson, just to name a few. As Keith said in a recent article, the Financial Times, you were defined as the most loved man in fashion. What is the importance of people in your work and life?
Well, the first thing is that all those little pieces in the book that you just described, I didn't know that you guys had done that. So that was a bit of a shock. And then a lovely shock, but it was a shock. Oh yeah, there they are. Yeah, inside.
Yeah,
I know, it's fantastic. I haven't dared look at them all yet, but I've got them here actually in front of me, and I didn't dare look at them yet. And then the other thing is that my father, going back to my dad, you know, when I told you he was an amateur photographer, he was the founder member of the camera club in our town, and he had that ability just to communicate with people and make people relax. And I hope I've just got a bit of that in me. And I think just being able to communicate with people in the many countries around the world, over 60 countries around the world where we have Paul Smith, and especially in places like Japan where I have over 200 shops. So I think the communication has made people warm to my way, I think. And because I'm always trying to make people feel relaxed. Going back to the very small first shop, that whole thing about having an object, and as soon as somebody walked in, you could make people feel relaxed. They're saying, oh, have you seen this? You do this. And it's just a way of communicating with people. So, I mean, I love meeting people. That's the simple thing.
Let's talk about the cover of the book. That's quite intriguing. Yeah. Can you explain what it is? Here they are.
So what they are is taken from these are, we call windings, and we take a piece of card, and then we take some yarn, and then we get the yarn, and then we wind the yarn around the card like this, and then that creates the stripe. And that's how the famous stripe came about, which incidentally was only originally made for one season. We work in seasons in fashion. And 118 years later, it's still popular, and now it's appeared on the cover of the book as well.
And we managed to have the stripes on the book.
Yeah. So if you look at the here at the end, you see all the ends are colorful, and inside is all the color as well. So without realizing it, this method of me creating the stripes, which in fact, just so you all know, is that when I used to work with the mills who made my shirting, this is the only way you could show what you wanted, because you couldn't really do it with pens or with watercolor. You just had to do it with yarn, with actual yarn. And so by doing it with yarn, then you could give them the actual name of the number of the yarn, and you could make beautiful things. The interesting thing about, obviously, yarn is three-dimensional, and when you put two yarns together, they reflect on each other, and so they can do different things. So if you put orange and red together, like you can see here on the book, if you put those together, they're hot colors, and then when you go to the sort of blue area here, they're more sort of cool. Where is it? They're cool colors. There we are. These are cool colors. So doing it in this very practical way is really works. The book is done in it's what I like about it is it's almost like your own personal book. It's not too smart, you know. It's very real. It's like a real book, and it's
also very tactile. Yeah. So you have this tactile feeling that is
big stitching here.
Yeah, stitches on the top. It's really amazing.
And I like this sort of handwriting inside, and underlining.
Details, small details that are very important. So this is a book that is full of amazing things, interesting thoughts, a book that you can read from cover to cover, or you can dip in and out. It's a book that's it's definitely, I will keep on going back to. What do you think people will take from it?
Well, I'm hoping that especially, well, everybody really, but I don't know why I'm about to say, especially young creatives, you know, people that are just starting out and they, yeah, like us. No, people that are just interested in the way you think about things. And it was an interesting exercise for me, actually, just because just to realize why I thought this was interesting and why I you know, chose the 50 objects. So I think it, especially if you're starting out, it's a sort of book that will give an example of the fact that you, in fashion, for instance, in fashion, but it could be anything, it could be product design, chef, or anything, is that it's an ingredient of things to build a business and to be a designer. It's not just about doing a drawing and having a fashion show and doing lots of expensive advertising. There's longevity is a lot more about reassessing, rethinking, realizing that you've never made it. As soon as you put your back into the chair and you think, I've made it, then that's when somebody's overtaking you in the fast lane. So it's a very real, honest book, I think, and that's something hopefully people would appreciate.
You're very well known for your stunning retail spaces, merchandising. During this pandemic, what advice can you give to the retailers and bookstores that are on this call today?
Well, I think if you go into our stores, which most of them are open, again, if you go into our stores, especially the one in London in Mayfair, for instance, or the ones in Paris, they still are full of really interesting, unusual objects. And so ceramics, chairs, furniture, pictures, as well as the clothes. And also there's always a mixture of a very beautiful classic, you know, cashmere and wool suit next to a zip jacket with some embroidery on it. So I'm always trying to do this to people, you know, just like you've never quite grabbed where I'm at, you know, and never being able to put me into this sort of box. And then online during lockdown in this room, actually, I did lots on my personal Instagram. I did lots of things about using your eyes and think where to get inspiration from. And I think that's something that you get from entering the world of this man.
I have one last quite personal question to me before we go to the question of the audience. You knew pretty well one of my idols. How was this?
Oh, very, very special. And that's a cheeky question. He used to come, not this office, but my other office, which is around the corner, my old one. And I was privileged that not very often, but occasionally he used to come. And he was very curious man. He'd say, he used to call me Smithy. He'd say, what's Smithy? What's that over there? Why have you got that book? And what does that do? And I think that really equals the way he worked when he wrote songs. And, you know, he used to often cut newspapers up and then stick the letters and the words together. And that was one of the way he composed his songs. So just a very interesting man and an absolute chameleon, as you know, changing his, you know, sometimes he'd be this and the next time he'd be that. And towards the end of his life, he got dressed very classically and privileged to say he wore a lot of our, you know, day clothes, not some of the theatrical clothes, but he wore a lot of.
We're getting a lot of questions from the audience, so let's start. Maureen from New York. Hello from New York. I'm curious about the process of deciding upon 15 objects drawn from such an illustrious career. How did we choose this?
Very quickly. I think you were there, actually. I think the point about when somebody puts you on the spot about, when I did in England, we have something called desert island discs, where they imagine you're on a desert island and you have to choose, I can't remember how many discs now, 8 or 10. And I did that really, really fast, because I think if you overanalyze anything, it becomes too labored. My whole business has never been, I've never sat around a table thinking, I'm going to have a big business and it's going to be worldwide. And, it's just really happened. And so choosing the objects was very spontaneous. And sometimes I had to think a bit hard what I would talk about, but most of the time it was all right. This was a good one. Did you remember this one? This is.
Oh my God, this was amazing.
This is from an artist friend of mine who is very interesting and very practical. So when I had a drink at his house one time, I said, Ewan, why have you got that on the bottom of the glass? It looks like a tap. And he said, because it broke, and so I fixed it. I mean, how genius is that? I mean, that's a piece of genius. I didn't really answer your question very well. Sorry.
Don't worry. This is a very specific question. Chris from LA. In the past, you have released products to celebrate stores' anniversary. Are you going to see any 50th anniversary product released this year?
Yes, I went up to my archive, which is still in my hometown, where we have about 3,000 pieces of clothing from the past. And so we chose pieces of clothing from the past, and we've reworked it, including the famous seed packet idea with the floral shirt. They're quite. I'm scared to say the word kitsch, but they're very fun, and we've reworked some of the spaghetti. You can buy the spaghetti onto a shirt or onto a sweatshirt, onto a cap. So yeah, they'll be out in the next, I think, 2 weeks. I think, yeah.
Also, we have another things that we will release. There will be a limited edition of the book that will be released just before Christmas. It will be a limited edition book with a special cover, but also with something special in it. It will be a Polaroid by Sarah Paul. And each of the Polaroid were taken in the office and they are signed, and each of the Polaroid will be different. So you will get an original from Sarah Paul. Signed
by hand on this desk and taken here during lockdown. Many, I think lots of wonderful photographs of all the little details.
Beautiful. They're absolutely stunning. So we have Matthew from the UK. Hello, Paul. I'm a massive fan of your work. Your material often so tactile. I love touching the cloth when I'm in one of your shops. Touch will lead me to make a purchase quite often. Has the pandemic impacted on how clothes are displayed in store?
Actually, the pandemic has not really altered the way we display things, but we obviously have had to spread the shops out a lot more. And what's interesting about our shops is they've been really still quite popular during the lockdown because, as I said earlier, they've got more than just clothes. So there's lots to look at. And I think anybody who's been isolating, there's a lot to look at in our shops, but also online. We sell we have the furniture online now, ceramics online, and objects online now. So it's our online offer has just been made bigger, just to do with the fact that so many of us are still at home. But the shops are always fun anyway.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Paul from the US, as an architect, I'm always looking at details. What I love most about your cloth and design in general is the attention to detail and the delightful surprises in linings or choice of yarn in your textile for Muharram. Can you speak of your process in designing in those details?
Yes, I think if you can imagine that, going back to my first collection, obviously I started the business with a little shop in 1970, but in 1978 I had my first little fashion show in Paris, in a friend's apartment actually. But originally Pauline was designing the clothes, and then after 3 years she wanted to study history of art and architecture. So I suddenly got the job of the fashion designer, even though I hadn't had any formal training, just the training from her. And so I kept thinking, well, why should anybody buy something from me? Because the clothes look very simple, very not classical, but easy. And I thought the only way is to try and get some sort of surprise or detail. So that's when we got the colored buttonholes, or the different colored buttons, or the patterned lining, which of course has been imitated enormously now around the world, and is not that rare anymore. But we always managed to do things with a different colored thread, or this has got red and white in it, for instance. It's red on the inside and white on the outside. So there's always little details, and that process was started with, why should anybody buy from Paul Smith? And that, when students ask me about starting their career, I always say, you've just got to ask yourself, why should anybody employ you or buy your work? So what have you got to offer? And what I had to offer was detail. It's pretty hard work, I have to tell you. We have these things called specification sheets, and some of the jackets have like 120 different little things that we have to give to the factory. So it's quite hard work.
We have Russ from the UK. Good afternoon, Sir Paul. Congratulations on your 50th anniversary. Your love of cycling is well documented, as is multicolored stripes on your products. Did the signature stripe idea have any correlation to the striped world champion cycle jersey?
I think this famous stripe really came about not through cycling, to be honest, but through the fact that previously I could only get very classical stripes, and then eventually when my orders were big enough to be able to design my own fabric, then that's why I came up with this. But behind me, you can see they're all cycle jerseys. I tidied them up especially for this interview, as you can see. But we do have a pretty nice cycling bicycle seat, a helmet, and they've all got these lovely stripes on them, and that sportiness, I suppose, is where the influences come from cycling, and of course the famous socks. So you're right, it has had an influence.
And in the book, I mean, there are a lot of items that are strictly related to cycling and to your passion for the bike.
Yeah, I mean, the cycling came at the age of 12 and then physically finished around 17 after my crash. But I've still kept in touch with it, and it really helped me a lot in my career, you know, because cycling. When you ride what is called mass start, when everybody's together, then it's very much about teamwork and running a business, which I never trained for. Left school at 15. So, you know, normally in this building, not now because of the virus, but normally there's 200 people in this building. So my early cycling days helped me understand about strengths and weaknesses and how to work together. So it had an effect.
We actually have a last question that is somehow related. Campbell from the US. How do you organize the office? Just a simple question.
Well, as you can see, it's all done on the computer every day. And that yellow bike, that's beautiful. That's from Chris Froome. He won the Tour de France. It's sort of organized. All those books behind are about art. These are all the cycling jerseys. And over there, we've got architecture, graphic design. And then, of course, there's the there's the famous suitcase with the train set in it. So,
As you do.
every office must have a train set. It's really important. It is sort of organized. I mean, I have all my design meetings around here with all my assistants, and we just lean back and get a book, and before we know where we are, we've got a new collection on our hands.
Yeah, I've just said every time I've been in that office and you or Adam mentioning a book or an object, you can find it immediately.
I know, it always surprises me, that does. I'm always shocked myself, but yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's been fantastic. And thank you so much also for having worked on this wonderful.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. I mean, the book's lovely, really, really nice. You know what? It's a real book. It's real, really interesting. As you say, cover to cover job.
Sir Paul and Amelia, I just, I think you never know how these are going to go, but there's two things. One is, Sir Paul, you completely blew up Demio. Like, you crashed the system. We had so many people that last minute wanted to hear you with Amelia. So congratulations on being our true rock star. The second thing that I love about this is it's about the collaboration that happens between Phaidon and our authors, and with such an iconic fashion and style person, to see kind of how you worked with Amelia throughout the last couple of years really, I think, inspired all of us. I got to tell you, in terms of objects, I'm celebrating your 25th year object. I bought this when I was on my 30th birthday at your extraordinary Fifth Avenue store.
Yeah.
I wear it all the time. I will be celebrating my next birthday wearing it again. So I've worn it every 10 years.
Yeah, marvelous. We still sell shirts.
Yeah, you want to buy more shirts?
I'm just being naughty.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see you again next Tuesday then. If it's been, if anybody else, if you want to do it again, we'll do it again next Tuesday.
We might hold you to that. So thank you again. You're both a delight and inspiring. And thanks to all our retailers and partners and authors. Apologies to those that begged to get in that we couldn't let in because of technology. And we look forward to seeing all of you very soon. And once again, Sir Paul, thank you for choosing Phaidon to publish your book and to work with us to celebrate your anniversary. You're an amazing man.
Bye.